Porcupine Tree in ABSENTIA. The seventh fully studio album by this band. Also, and this having literally within a year, following up the album that I had, my recent classic, which would have been, of course, Opeth's Blackwater Park. That album of which furthering his lost love or lost passion towards metal through the form of extreme metal, having worked with this band, and also in turn not just Opeth themselves, but also Meshuggah. Though you don't really hear that necessarily in their music. They're clearly still kind of stuck in that certain portion of the progressive metal scene that is essentially more so taking Tool's anima alt metal and giving it a more with some of those King Crimson, Pink Floyd progressive rock isms, so to speak. Or at least they helped to build off onto that throughout most of what is 2000s prog metal. Or at least those bands that weren't trying to copy paste Lateralus or anything Meshuggah was doing, you know, unless you're Gojira. Gojira was was a totally different story. But anyways, which I need to deep dive into that at some point, especially once they decide to come up with a record. But anyways, this 12-track affair is mostly a concept, and in turn, that was very dark in of itself. And most of the lyricism, it just deals mostly with the exception of the Sound of Music, which is just another one of his tangents against the music industry, which I guess he didn't have enough, which I guess was probably left out, one other thing from Stupid Dream left off the cutting room floor. He had a couple of them in Light Bulb Sun as well, which was understandable at that point because it kind of came out within a year of that. This record coming out about 2 years later, and would be being the first under the more heavy metal, progressive metal type of sound, as opposed to that more psychedelic space rocky stuff in most of their 90s work, or the 99 2000s pop rock sound that Radiohead, the Bends, inflected pop rock sound that they were going post-Brit poppy pop rock sound that they had. Which they did a better and more experimental job with Light Bulb Sun, and had hinted that they were kind of interested in doing metal, but it didn't really fully showcase itself until, I guess, like I had said within my Blackwater Park review. Check that out. It's in the ether somewhere, Anyways. And it just going through a lot of just the ideas of it. Wedding Nails, though, is more of an instrumental thing, which not sure what specific thing inspired that one, but and then the Point Dot 3, which is mostly just a small little short little lyrical thing, and it's mostly just very minimalistic in its nature. There are some very tasty riffs, and definitely coming off of something like Blackwater Park and bringing in some taste, even just as if not far more tastier riffs. For sure, especially like the little snippet you just heard from the opening track, Blackest Eyes, which in fact is, given what the concept of this album is about involving the serial killer thing, or at least getting into the psychology and the mindset of it, or just the lack of, and between that and the other single that of Strip the Soul, kind of being where the idea of this concept of in absence or in one's absence, which is the Latin term for, which is, of course, in absentia being the Latin term of that. And just that lack thereof of a soul. And just figuring out more that psychology aspect of what is a serial killer. Not that any other thing like you probably would have seen on History Channel or any other documentary that tries to do something like that wouldn't have already told you, but somehow they make it for the most part in music form. And like I said, with the exception of the Sound of Music. And Blackest Eyes is great, and then the riffs is definitely a very tasty one. The moment you hear some of these riffs, they'll definitely stick with you on the heavier side. And in a way, like a certain band in the form of Coheed and Cambria, if you can make a riff that works really good both acoustically and high driven and high gain distorted, you've got something good on your hands, especially if it winds up being put up as your chorus riff, which usually it's the verses or the intro that, or like the bridge that usually gets kind of, more of the tastier rhythms. But it's really actually the chorus on that one, which I even give more so or less. And plus a nice bass line is nice and helpful. Well, there's like two of them, but the one that always wind up, even though those two, that and the other one I'm thinking of, started to blur together in places. Trains was another one that was, I guess, a single, but it was more, I think about someone that was essentially either the serial killer or that of the mindset of the victim, of someone who was basically wound up tied to a train track, I guess, from the way it sounds. Or at least the serial killer looking at his victim. I don't know. That's what it comes off, I guess. Or at least by the end of it. It's, because it seems normal-ish at first before it starts to change into something else. Lips of Ashes is pretty, it's, the ones that do stand out isn't bad. When you get to the later half, that's when the riffs on that one is insane. Prodigal, most of the part, it's mostly still progressive rock oriented, but there is some more traditional and progressive metal elements seeped in places where need be. The dot 3 is not bad. There's like a live version where they basically kind of cut out some of the outro after the outro portions of the only song I did have any slight issues with, or at least in terms of, at least its delivery for the most part, for me, the creator has a master tape, but that's kind of it. It's mostly it for me. It's the only one I do not seem to want to have replay value with it, as opposed to something like Strip the Soul. Collapse the Light into Earth is definitely an interesting choice of closer. Especially given the string arrangements that they try to do and stuff with it. I won't shiver in the cold. Which it is cold outside, by the way. Like, 20-something degrees? Anyways. Won't let the shadows take their toll. Won't cover my head in the dark. I won't forget you when we part. Collapse the light into earth. So, but yeah, that's for the most part what this. A lot of the overall for me, that's as an album for what this is as a whole. It is definitely. I understand when most people wind up when they did decide to finally make a ranking list when it comes to this band. This album winds up essentially being considered so far in their top 3. In fact, so far I've only seen 2 people who have bothered to talk about them with the same exact top 3. I'm still waiting for some other people so I could figure out from there, but it seems so far this one, between this record, their second album, that's name escapes me because it's one of their 90s ones that is very elusive, and of course, Fear of a Blank Planet, have been considered amongst their their best works. Overall, I guess, from what I've been hearing, even though I would be willing to put Light Up Sun up there. personally. Even despite what most people say about Stupid Dream, it's fine for what it is. It has its moments. But overall, for what it is, it's definitely... I still keep wanting to come back to this as far as being an album experience, even though more so musically, I would say, than the actual lyrical content. Hence why I understand why most people would put it at like least number 3, but... And for given that they wanted to dive into embracing metal, even for a set, and going into a concept and a subject matter that actually makes sense of that. I do start to wonder if some of those inklings of the concepts do slightly kind of seep into some of the later, at least, this slightly might have seeped into Deadwing a little bit. And then there might have been like a more occultish thing with like the final Porcupine Tree record, which is unfortunately not the best idea to send off in comparison to what Steven would do on a second album, which I think improving that he could do so much more without what he had done with the band. And he did in further releases, but to me, not nearly as well as Grace for Drowning in that regard. But I do enjoy what this... I still love coming back to these, and I still want to learn the riffs. Learn the riffs that on these things. Wedding Nails has an interesting riff as well, though despite its solo is an issue for me, but given that its song's called Wedding Nails, and the solo just comes off to me like a nail. It has a sort of annoyance that can be comparable to nails on a chalkboard. So, which I believe is intentional, so I let it slide because the rest of the song is fine, and the riffs are tasty. And that's a lot of that on this record. Not that their later efforts didn't have some tasty riffs too, at times, even though there are some songs that are a lot more lyrically unappealing in comparison, like Halo from that from the follow-up record. Luckily, they had, like I said, when it came to Fear of a Blank Planet, that one definitely was something. Eventually, I might get to talking about that one. Eventually. But for now, this album had it's having a reissue of some sort. So I felt I need to want to talk about it. And if you want to go and find more information or give this album a listen, apparently there's a European version of this record that has like 2 other songs that are probably much closer into the concept, but for some reason didn't work for it. I need to check those songs out yet. I've mostly just went off of this version as opposed to hearing those things, which I wonder if those tracks are going to wind up on the next edition. I might get that later, and well, who knows? I might have a follow-up to that. I don't know if I will, but we'll see. But that's pretty much this album in a nutshell. What do you guys think of it? Leave a comment. What did you guys think of In Absentia? Do you think it's pretty much considered like most Porcupine Tree albums kind of masterclass? Leave a comment below, let me know. Link in the description to my Facebook page. Like and follow me there. I'm Tyler. This is Rockin' Movies with Tyler. And also hit that subscribe button and click that notification bell so you get more notifications since YouTube's algorithm is spotty at best, at least nowadays. And if you well, as always, I guess keep it real, keep it rocking. I will see you in the next video. Take care, y'all.